Conservatives exist to conserve the ideals of the American founding.
These ideas are actually the source of our recovery.
On January 20th, when the president puts his hand on the Bible, everything changes.
Our goal is to ensure that the conservative administration that takes office in January of 2025 is ready on day one.
The next conservative president will only be able to do so with your help.
I'm the president of the Conservative Partnership Institute,
Vice President of Hillsdale College,
the head of the Office of Justice Programs,
Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs,
Senior Advisor to the President,
Assistant Press Secretary.
You're here to cut government. You're here to do something that's not in their interest.
The deep state is real. You want to be someone who knows answers.
As a public servant, you're working on behalf of the American people, the greatest country on the planet.
It's your job to ensure that that power is executed responsibly and in line with the president's will.
This is your chance to truly make a difference.
We're glad you're joining us.
If the next Republican president does not execute a dramatic course correction, there may never be another chance. So if you're not on board with helping implement a dramatic course correction because you're afraid it'll damage your future employment prospects, it'll harm you socially, look, I get it. That's a real danger. It's a real thing. But please, do us all a favor and sit this one out.
What do you think about all of about the left's words and definitions in the environment?
It's a great point, Katie. They don't stop. Climate change, allegedly, is everywhere. And if the American people elect a conservative president, his administration will have to eradicate climate change references from absolutely everywhere. And according to our intelligence community, the #1 threat facing our country today is, drumroll, climate change. Not Russia, not China, not AI, climate change. This shows how the federal government is all in on this issue. And climate change activists wield a lot of power. This is an issue to pay attention to as it has infiltrated every part of the federal government. Now, when I think of climate change, I immediately think of population control, don't you? I think about the people who don't want you to have children because of the impact on the environment. Perhaps not everyone will make that connection, but after spending time in the international space trying to protect life, I can tell you that this is part of their ultimate goal, to control people.
I think you can expect that equity and all of the equity executive orders under Biden will be repealed early in the next administration. This is going to require a very detailed plan to execute the eradication of the dictates in the equity orders. For instance, there's a gender advisor position created by one of these executive orders. That position has to be eradicated, as well as all the task forces, the removal of all the equity plans from all the websites, and a complete rework of the language in internal and external policy documents and grant applications.
OIRA is a very small agency. Too small, actually. It has a staff of about 50. A conservative administration should increase its staffing levels considerably. 50 people are not enough to adequately police the regulatory actions of the entire federal government. OIRA is one of the few government agencies that limits the regulatory ambitions of other agencies.
Now, in terms of a survival tip, do not let career bureaucrats hinder you from advancing the president's agenda. Keep in mind, you're coming into a place, Washington, D.C., that does not share your conservative values. They're even hostile to it, because you're here to do something that's not in their interest. They're not going to be your friend, and they're not going to help you succeed. What are you doing? You're here to cut government. You're here to cut spending. You're here to cut regulations. You're here to stop the waste, fraud, and abuse that's going on. But a lot of careers have been made from that. A lot of money has been made from that. Fiefdoms have been built around it. So you're going to get a lot of opposition here. It's an entire industry of opposition from lobbyists, professional associations, contractor groups, and disappointingly, faith-based organizations.
The American people who vote for a conservative presidential administration, they're not reading the New York Times. They're not reading the Washington Post. Actually, to the contrary, if those outlets publish something, they're going to assume it's false. So the only way to reach them with any voice of credibility is through working with conservative media outlets.
You know, the adage we hear a lot now is like, wow, this meeting could have been an email. Well, in the federal government, this email probably should have been a meeting, because what you probably want to do is, if you need to resolve something, it's probably, if you can do it, it's probably better to walk down the hall, buttonhole a guy and say, hey, what are we going to do here? Talk through the decision, work it out. If you reduce it to writing, maybe you can protect it under some of these exemptions, but man, that's a lot of a fight. You're probably better off going down to the canteen, getting a cup of coffee, talking it through, and making the decision, as opposed to sending them an email and creating a thread that accountable.us or one of those other groups is going to come back and seek, and you're going to have to explain why you're withholding it, and you're going to fight in court. It's going to be a lot of expense. It's an email that's better resolved with a meeting.